Welcome back. In today's explainer, we're diving into a challenge that I think we've all faced. How do you get your project to actually connect? We're going to break down a really powerful tool called audience mapping. It's all about making sure your message doesn't just reach people, but that it reaches the right people.
You know that feeling, right? You've got this amazing project, a super important campaign, or just a brilliant idea, but it feels like it's just not landing. You're putting all this work in, and you're getting crickets. So what do? How do you fix that?
Well, the solution isn't to just shout louder. It's to get smarter about how you navigate the world. To really make an impact, you have to understand the whole ecosystem your project lives in. And for that, a simple list of contacts just won't cut it. You need a map.
And that's exactly what an audience map is. Think of it as your strategic guide, kind of like a GPS for navigating the super complex world of stakeholders, influencers, and all the decision makers out there. So what is it exactly? Well, audience mapping is basically a way to draw a picture of everyone and everything connected to your project. But, and this is the absolute key, it's not just about who they are, it's about seeing the relationships between them, how they influence each other, and how they connect. That's where the magic is.
The model uses this really simple but powerful image, a set of concentric circles with your project sitting right there in the bullseye. So let's build this map out together, layer by layer, starting right from the center.
Okay, so that very first circle, the one right next to your project, that's the direct circle. These are the people you deal with day in, day out. We're talking about your team, your main clients, your most passionate supporters. They're the ones in the trenches with you.
All right, let's take one step out to the next ring. This is the indirect circle. These are the heavy hitters. They might not be in your daily emails, but their opinions and their actions have a huge effect on your inner circle. Think about key journalists, maybe some policymakers, or those big, respected names in your industry. Expanding even further, we get to the remote circle. Now, these groups might feel pretty far away, but their collective feelings really matter. They could be impacted by what you're doing, or they could end up shaping the conversation down the line. This might be the general public, or maybe specific communities that aren't paying attention yet.
And finally, we have the biggest, outermost layer, the societal circle. Now, this one's different. We're not talking about people anymore. We're talking about the big picture forces, things like new laws, economic shifts, or major cultural trends. This is like the weather system that the rest of your map has to exist in.
Okay, so you get the structure, right? You've got these 4 regions, but how do you actually go about creating one of these maps for your own work? Well, the good news is it's a pretty straightforward 3-step process. First, you just identify everybody, and I mean everybody you can think of. Then, you validate the map with your team. You argue, you discuss, and you figure out which circle each person or group belongs in. And finally, and this is the most important part, you start to define the relationships. You literally draw lines to show who influences who. Now, to make this whole process actually work, here are a few pro tips. Definitely use something flexible, like Post-it notes, so you can move people around easily. Make it a team sport. Disagreements are actually gold because they show you different perspectives. Really push yourselves to think beyond the usual suspects. And last but not least, always build your map from the inside out. Start with that direct circle first.
This is the moment where the map really comes alive. It stops being just a list of names and circles. When you start drawing those lines between them, you suddenly start to see all these hidden pathways of influence and communication that you never knew existed.
And this is a perfect way to see that in action. So, check this out. Say you're a political campaign. The press is in your direct circle, right? They inform your active voters, who are also in that direct circle. But then, and here's the cool part, those active voters go on to influence passive voters, a group way out in that remote circle. You just found an indirect path to an audience you couldn't reach yourself.
So, you've gone through the process, you've created this beautiful, insightful map. The big question is, now what? What do you actually do with it? This is where we turn all that insight into real action.
I mean, let's be realistic. Nobody has unlimited time, money, or energy. The real power of this map is that it helps you go from what could we do to what should we do. It forces you to answer that huge question. Where do we focus our energy to get the biggest bang for our buck?
And for that, we use this, the influence versus interest matrix. This is your strategic playbook. You just plot your stakeholders on here and boom, you have an action plan. Got high influence, high interest groups? You keep them close. High influence but low interest? Your job is to get their attention. Low influence groups? You either just monitor them or you work to inform and connect with them. The big takeaway is that you can't treat everybody the same. Each box requires a totally different strategy.
And once you know who to talk to and what your strategy is, you can get super specific with your messaging. This slide shows it perfectly. You start by defining what a group thinks right now, like they're just a single-issue party. Then you define what you want them to think. They recognize all the important issues. That kind of clarity is everything.
All right, so we've gone from mapping our entire world to really focusing our message. The final piece of the puzzle is turning all of this smart thinking into a powerful story that actually moves people to do something. And it really comes down to this simple three-part model. First, your message. Craft a real human story that offers a solution, not just a list of facts. Second, build momentum. Use your map to find those key influencers and get them on your side. And third, create mass. This is where you build that public support or form strategic partnerships to give your project some real weight.
You know, this quote from the source material just hits the nail on the head. We live in a world that's all about data and evidence, and that's great. But that makes it even more important to connect what you're doing to something real and human. Because at the end of the day, people connect with stories, not spreadsheets.
So there you have it. The map gives you clarity, the matrix gives you focus, and a great story that delivers the power. You've officially mapped your world. So now the only question is, what's the first story you're going to tell?